Well, storms like Hurricane Matthew have long impacted presidential campaigns, most recently in 2012, where Hurricane Sandy sidelined Mitt Romney while Americans watched President Obama work hand in hand with the Republican governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie.
Yeah, that was a big moment.
That was a very big moment, that moment where he hugged him as he got off the plane there.
Many people think that infected the election.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a question. Will Hurricane Matthew actually help Hillary Clinton's chances as media outlets pause their campaign coverage from wall-to-wall storm coverage? She currently holds a slight lead in the polls. Joining us now to take a look at how Hurricane Matthew could impact the presidential election is Politico senior polling analyst Steve Shepard. Okay, Steve, I'm curious because there was some concern. Democrats in Florida had asked the governor to extend the window for registering to vote, and he said no. They've had plenty of time. We're not going to do it. We do know that if they had extended it, it would lean towards Democrats' favor. How's that going to play out this election?
Potentially. I think it was more of an opportunity for Democrats to put the heat on Rick Scott. You mentioned him in the previous interview. In addition to being the second-term Republican governor of Florida, he's also heading up a super PAC supporting Donald Trump in this election. So it put him in an uncomfortable position, and I think that's more of what Democrats wanted to accomplish. They've been trying to register voters in Florida for months or even years at this point, and are more focused right now on getting the voters that they've registered to vote early. And this hurricane kind of puts a pause on those efforts.
But isn't that, we were just looking at that graphic there where in 2012, the last 5 days of voter registration, something like 50,000 voters signed up. So isn't that a tremendous number that could possibly make a difference in a state like Florida?
Potentially, if they lean toward one party or another. Like I said, the parties have been working to register voters for a long time. It's certainly right up until the deadline is a big effort. The good news is so far that the eye of the hurricane has remained offshore. We hope that happens as it moves further up the coast because that would spare the worst to coastal areas. But now that once the pieces are picked up, you mentioned Disney World is going to be reopened tomorrow. That still gives voters 2 days, and I expect the campaigns to be working feverishly Monday and Tuesday to get those folks over to their county elections boards and signed up on the rolls.
Steve, let me tap your expertise as a polling expert. In national polls, Hillary Clinton is leading Donald Trump by at least 6 points in some polls that have been conducted. But the Trump people and the Trump campaign has argued that this race, in particular, this race for the presidency in 2016, is going to come down to state-by-state polls. So what are you seeing not only in Florida, but in some of those battleground states, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire?
Well, what we're seeing is movement toward Hillary Clinton over the past couple of weeks. Since the first debate, we have seen Hillary Clinton gain about 3 or 4 points in the polls nationally and in the battleground states. She has moved from slightly behind in Florida to now ahead. She's moved from behind in Ohio to now roughly tied. She's moved from roughly tied in Pennsylvania to now ahead by between, around 5 or 10 points, depending on which poll you look at. That is movement that's been pretty consistent over the past 2 weeks. Now we're coming up on the next sort of flashpoint in this campaign, and that's Sunday night's second debate.
And that's the question, my follow-up to that, Steve, is how important is this debate going to be? I mean, generally, we've always said that people make up their minds around the time of the first debate, but because this is such an unusual election, is this really make or break for Trump, and can he recover from the first debate with a performance that's deemed well or good in the second one?
That's a good question. I think it depends on how prepared Donald Trump is for this. He joked last night that he didn't really need to prepare. He said that this was supposed to be a tune-up for this town hall format where the candidates are going to be questioned not by the moderators, but by voters. And then he didn't really take questions from voters last night, and he only stayed about a third of the time he said he was going to. If he takes it lightly and it looks unprepared on that stage on Sunday night, then I think voters won't be able to see him as a plausible president. And that's been the biggest obstacle for him. Voters right now don't think he's qualified to be president. They don't like the fact that he doesn't seemingly prepare for these things. He needs to show a different side of himself, and he's running out of opportunities to do so.
We know, as we mentioned earlier, that Hillary Clinton's leading in the polls in Florida, something like 3 percentage points there. The hurricane is taking attention away from the campaign trail. Is one side get an advantage over that? Do we know?
I don't think so. We still have a month to go until Election Day. Floridians are going to begin as soon as tomorrow, really to pick up the pieces. The storm is going to pull away this evening from Florida. That leaves a lot of time for the campaign to grab center stage again. So I ultimately, look, both candidates will probably react to this after the debate, on the debate stage, and then potentially next week visiting the state of Florida. It's still the most important battleground state, 29 electoral votes. Both will be down there. Both will have an opportunity to show sympathy and empathy for Floridians and to show some leadership. And unless one botches that opportunity terribly, I think ultimately it's going to come out in the wash.
Okay, Steve Shepard, thank you for joining us, Steve.
My pleasure.